are talking about additional resolutions and amendments to 23 as well that we need to get into. Pauline, was your question on the presentation, or is it something that relates to item 23? All right, so ask the question.
A very, very quick question, Andrew. I was just wondering if staff had any plans to do a lessons learned piece of work about this.
Yeah, so any major incident, we do lessons learned. This has been a major incident. So yes, we will be doing a lessons learned. And
Yes.
yeah, absolutely. I haven't talked to Dawn about this yet, but I would imagine that we would use an independent person to do a bit of a deep dive into how we've responded, what we've done well, and what we could do differently if we were to face this sort of
So you're planning to do that anyway? We don't.
Absolutely.
So an external independent review, essentially. Yeah. All right, thank you. Let's now move on to item 23. How do we want to handle that? I mean, obviously there are aspects of the presentation and aspects of the questions that have really gone into the item 23 matter anyway. Was there some staff comment on item 23 as we move into it, or that was all there as part of the presentation?
Yeah, that was all part of our presentation.
And the paper's quite self-explanatory as well. All right, so moving into then any questions specifically on item 23 that we haven't covered already. Is there anything further? Yanni.
Thanks. One of the deputations made the request, can we see the feedback from the 120 local groups? Like, where's the report around what the feedback is?
The feedback was done by the local community board staff. So
right. Is there a report or something that we can look at to see the feedback that people have given?
I can ask. To be honest with you, this happened while I was away, while I was off sick. So I'll try and pull it together. I know there was a list of questions that was asked everybody who was rung. Yeah. And so I can, the answer is I can find that information for you.
Okay, thanks. In terms of the schools, just wanted to check, do we know how much, I mean, I see that we've had the 200,000 that's been made available.
Yep.
Do we know how much of that funding has been utilised? And do we know how many of the things that they said they were going to do have actually been done?
So 180,000 of it has been allocated, of the 200, and we have within the yes. So there's a crossover. There's 4 schools that are in a crossover. They were recommended initially, and then we held them back for a while because MOE were having discussions. They are included in the new 8 schools and the 19 ELCs. And that 20,000 has been will be brought through. So the 200,000 technically will all be spent of the first allocation. In terms of what they used it for, no, I don't. I can't give you any information on that. I can ask, but when we gave it to them, we weren't expecting any reporting. So I don't know.
Right. And just mindful of again the deputation this morning of the request to not just consider the odours reduced, so therefore the impact's gone, but actually there is an ongoing wellbeing issue in the community. So in terms of the schools, has there been any discussion with the impacted schools around a second round of support in terms of addressing the impact that this has had?
No, there hasn't been.
Okay. Are we able to do that? Is that, I mean, I don't quite understand the accountability or the traditional accountability, but in terms of not wanting to make it overly hard for the schools to access the funding, but also just checking in around what their needs are at this point as we've developed the plan.
So the relationships with the schools has been through MOE staff. Right. So we have not been in direct contact with them.
Okay.
Because that's a relationship that education asks for, and so that's what it is. The feedback I haven't had feedback from them, but I can ask.
Yeah, I mean, I think
certainly come back
in terms of the plan, yes. And I've signalled an additional resolution to approve the plan today, but noting that we've got the health and wellbeing webinar coming up, and also I think from some of the deputations this morning, some additional information that people would like, and I guess getting some additional information from the Ministry of Education around how the schools are going, I think would be really useful.
Sure.
In terms of the, possible amendments to the plan. Just wanted to check in terms of extension to the zone. So there's no recommendation that the zone gets extended.
No.
And that's both for South Shore and South New Brighton, and also, I guess, for Woolston Linwood, which were impacted at the start of the process.
No, that isn't a recommendation from staff.
Right.
To do that.
And what's that based on?
Oh, it's based on the fact that the number of requests, the last 4 weeks and 5 weeks of what's happened out in the community, the financial implication of it all. Really, it's a wraparound of the whole situation.
Okay.
It is only a staff recommendation, however.
Yeah. The targeted support, so just to be really clear, the targeted support to help removing the barriers to primary health service will mean that people register with Pegasus. Is that, I'm just trying to understand, can you just talk me through how someone who's been struggling with accessing GP or getting mental health support can access the support, and what the cost, if any, will be to the individual or the household?
Okay, so on the flyer that will go out tomorrow is some instructions on how to do that. And so basically, they would call Pegasus. They would make a phone call, say, "This is my situation." One of the workers, I'm not sure if they would physically go and see them, or the conversation would happen over the telephone. If there is a barrier to health, whether it be, like I said yesterday, whether it be a cost of GP, whether it be transport, whether it be the need for a support person, if it's within the recognised zone and the PCW assesses that that's acceptable, then probably there would be no cost. That's the idea of this part of the funding, is to be able to offer a no-cost service. If it is around, if there's implications in there, well, the care workers are the best, the community workers are the best people to assess that. But we would think. The other advantage of this is that it might draw some of those people out. I think it become known really early that there's a number of people in this community who aren't linked into a GP. And this may be a source of an easier way of accessing and supporting those people into registering at GPs.
Just reading the flyer, it's not really clear. Like, the first line is, if the situation is affecting your health and wellbeing, seek medical advice from your doctor or healthcare provider. I wonder if we've kind of got it around the wrong way. We should be saying to people, contact Pegasus Health. We've set up a program for them to.
I think.
Yeah. I mean, I've provided this feedback to Simon already. Yeah, but I just.
Yeah, just on that, we've received. Is it the information that was provided to you, was it complete? We were waiting on that information from Pegasus. So we've received that now. So I'm updating that information.
Right.
And that information that was in there was what CDHB has provided to us as well, to make sure that information was there.
So I'm just concerned that we're still giving people the message, go to your own doctor and GP to get medical support, and yet we're also actually establishing a system to actually provide support to people that need it the most. And I wonder if that's kind of a bit confusing.
So we can have another look at that. I think for most people, going to the GP probably is the right thing to do.
But then there's no support for the cost of doing that.
Yeah, so we'll have another look at the wording of that.
Right. So is there any ability for us, if someone just contacts their GP and it's related to the impact of the treatment plant fire, for that cost to be covered?
At this stage, other than the cards that were handed out or the support that was handed out through that package, no, there isn't anything. However, the PCWs, some of them are attached to those medical centres. Yeah. And so I'm sure there'll be a conversation from Pegasus. If someone was to walk in and a GP was there and it was clear that this is what it was and it fit the criteria, then there is the possibility for that to happen. I can't tell you it would happen, but that's a further discussion we would have.
Right. Okay.
All right, Yanni, I'm keen to move on. I know there are other people with questions as well.
I mean, go around the table.
All right, thank you. So Celeste.
So very quick ones. The deadline for closing off the support is the 19th. Is it possible to extend that a bit, maybe to the end of the month, bearing in mind that, if people don't have the information, there can be a bit of a lag?
Again, Simon's information is a little bit behind. Actually, the request is the 12th, is next Friday, although the 19th will not come out. The reason for the 12th is I had contracted 4 providers to deliver the service. The 4 providers, the uptake is very, very slow. The request has come from them. They've stayed open extra hours. They have done all of that. And really, I'm not saying they're twiddling their thumbs, but that's in response to the 4 providers asking.
I guess the concern is that it was communicated to the South Shore, South Brighton community that they would be eligible, but lots of people won't know that, so they wouldn't have applied. So when there is reference to people not accessing that support, we also have to consider they don't know, as we heard this morning, that they can. So closing this off at the convenience of the providers without taking into consideration the barriers to accessing it might be perceived as being premature.
So 3 weeks ago, we were contacted by South Shore and by the other community groups out there. It was put on Facebook pages. It went out far and wide that it was open and that we would consider it. We've had 70, close to 80 requests. Yes, there'll always be people that don't know. There always will be, and I totally acknowledge that. But certainly from that part of town, the application rate has lifted. I would just consider that we have given enough time.
So bearing in mind that if this has only got, because we haven't done a letterbox drop around the out of zone support, have we?
No.
So how would people know, apart from this flyer, which is going out on Friday, so they will have a week if they haven't heard it through Facebook? As we've heard, there's quite a large elderly community, so how will we reach those people before the support package, which is now being offered to them, is closed off?
So we would use everything we could. I mean, your community board and you as a councillor have a responsibility for this as well. So I guess we all put it out as far as we can. It's interesting to see that the community boards have not had anybody come and request anything from the community board to do with this. So in terms of people knowing, I honestly believe that they know. The uptake is there to be taken. To answer your question, we will publicise this in the blogs, the daily updates, everything we can. I know that's social media. I know it's online. It'll be in the flyer. The community groups will be aware.
So what can be done to extend the time frame is, I guess, the question, because I don't necessarily think it's would have reached a lot of people, and saying that, as councillors we can do that would take us a very long time to go door knocking throughout the whole of the ward. So how do we reach those people before the access is closed off? Because I do think there is an issue there.
Yeah, so I can't answer the question again. I've answered the question you asked. If it's about extending the time, then that's a decision that you will make today.
Yeah, okay. This because I think this was circulated to the advisory group and they were given this time frame, so they would be feeding back on that, so they wouldn't have that updated information.
I spoke to the advisory group the other night, and the 12th was the date I gave.
Last night?
Absolutely.
The second question is, in terms of the lesson learned, will that include feedback from the advisory group?
Yeah, well.
Yeah.
And then just finally, will there be information about the environmental testing on the leaflet? So, for instance, saying that people are concerned about eating from their gardens and things, they don't have anything to worry about?
What? Is it on the
Yeah, we haven't commented specifically on that issue. We've just really worked off what we've had the medical officer of health saying for us, as well as that the hydrogen sulfide, which is the principal gas that we've been detecting in the odour, it's water soluble. It's not expected to cause people long-term harm. I wouldn't think it would cause any damage or any risk to you with vegetables, washing. There's other risks there as well. So washing leafy vegetables and the likes would be more than sufficient to deal with that.
Can we get that included on the flyer? Because there's been quite a lot of questions from within the community about that particular issue. I'm aware that the Community Advisory Group saw the flyer for the first time, so they've only had till 10 o'clock this morning to comment on it. So it's quite a tight turnaround for them to give feedback. So if we could sort of make sure that if we're doing one letterbox drop, it does address the questions that people have.
Yeah. So Andrew, this probably doesn't relate to this report particularly. Happy to finish this part of the conversation off, but the flyer we've packed it full of the really, really urgent and important information. There isn't any space left for other information. So we'll have a think about how we might communicate those sorts of issues outside the flyer. But at this point, there's no room in the flyer to add a lot more.
All right, thank you. Now, I'm keen to wrap up with questions on this so that we can move to getting something on the table and deal with the various amendments that are in front of us. Now, one of the amendments that's been signalled to me is adding an additional 20,000 for each of the 2 community boards in the area. That presumably would have the effect of approving allocation of up to 200,000 rather than 160. Can I get some comment from staff on the recommendation for 160 and on the effectiveness and source of the additional $40,000 that will be proposed through that amendment?
So I would probably think that it's an extra 20,000 because we had it already allocated for some in there. I think it's important to put all the information on the table, so I'm going to do that. So the community boards at the moment, the Coastal Burwood Community Board has an underspend from last year of 27,000. When they have already estimated what their DRF will be, so that will be 93,000 for next year, which is approximately 18,000 more than what it was last year. Linwood Central Heathcote Community Board will have a DRF of about 75,000, and of course, I don't mean to say this rudely, but we know that board is transitioning into something else, and so the money will be split anyway. So I just wanted you to know what those DRF levels are. If that's the will of the table, then yes, there'd be another 20,000 that I would suggest.
So that would bring the number up to 180.
180.
So just to drill down further into the answer that you've given,
Yes.
is what you're saying is that you believe with those surpluses in the fundings that the community boards are already holding, that there would be sufficient without adding the extra 20,000. I'm just keen to get a specific response on that.
Look, I don't. It's a fund that's purely around discretion. So we could talk about last year's uptake. This year, because of COVID and everything, things are very different. No, I don't.
It depends what other applications
Absolutely,
occur
it
throughout
does.
the balance of the year, bearing in mind that we're only at the beginning of August.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's helpful. Thank you. All right, Yanni.
I mean, our board's got a community board meeting today. We're going to have 42,000 left in our discretionary by the end of today. So I'm not sure where the figures are coming from or how up to date they are, but it's.
And we've got the bulk of the year ahead of us. It's only the beginning of August.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just wanted to check around the cleanup. Right, we've heard from both the community forum or reference group last night and the deputations this morning around the cleanup, and I think it's important that we add it into the community wellbeing plan. We've got the household support. So, but I just wanted to check because we say currently that we may help people who are unable to clean up, but actually I'd like us to actually help people. And I wonder if we can change the language. I am suggesting an amendment to go further. But I just wanted to check at the moment, how are we going to clean up the ones that we've said we're unable to get, who are unable to do it, and that we may do it? What's the what's the funding and the resource that's being put into that.
I guess that cuts to some other questions around the community wellbeing response plan and what the status of that is. Because, Yanni, in your proposed amendments, you talk about noting the adoption of the community wellbeing response plan as an interim plan. I wasn't aware that we were being asked to adopt or endorse or, the plan is there and it exists as essentially an operational document. I wasn't aware that we've been asked to approve or endorse or formally receive or do anything with that plan at all. So, we're kind of moving into a territory that requires some explanation of the status and ownership and so on of that plan, I guess, as well.
Okay. You are correct. We're not asking you today to endorse or do anything with
Adopt or, yep.
It's a discussion between the groups.
So it is our operational response, and one of the reasons that we don't want you to adopt it as a plan is it is very adaptive. This is a moving feast. Things are changing all the time, and we want to be as responsive as we can be, which is why we haven't given you really sort of specific recommendations around how the money will be specifically allocated, because we want to be as fleet of foot as we can be to respond to the individual needs that are coming from that community.
So to put that into the context of Yanni's question, I guess what Yanni's doing is suggesting some changes or improvements to the operational plan, rather than necessarily suggesting an amendment to something that we would be resolving, in as much as, we're not resolving to adopt the plan. So in that context, do you want to comment on Yanni's question?
So in terms of what we will do to respond to people who may not be able to deal with the discoloration on their homes, we will take that as a case-by-case basis. So as Nigel said, we will be available to go and talk to people. We'll be able to go and visit people and give them specific advice. And if they're physically struggling and they really feel that they need to hasten the removal of the discoloration, we will look at making our staff available to go and physically do that work for them or with them, or our contractors. But at the moment, we don't know what the scale is going to be. We're not anticipating a lot of demand, because the feedback that we've had so far, and Nigel's talked to a lot of people, most people are being quite pragmatic about it. They're saying, well, I'm going to clean my house because that's what I do in the springtime anyway, or I'm prepared to wait and see what happens. So, we're not offering a service, but we are making ourselves available should there be individuals in the community that actually need extra help. And as I said, we're prepared to go out, and we've got staff available to go out and talk to individuals and neighbourhoods if that's what's needed in the community.
And that's been made very clear in the response to a number of questions this morning. It's quite deliberate, and it's a particular approach which has been well clarified.
Yes.
Thank you.
If we wanted to get council to provide a cost-free clean-up service on request for the discoloration, what's the amendment that would be appropriate? And can I suggest, we're getting nearly to 11, maybe could we have a wee adjournment for, break and sort out the amendments?
We're taking the time that we need to answer the many questions which have been put. Let's continue with questions. I think there'll be a natural adjournment that we need to take to deal with some of the amendments that have been put forward. So I'd suggest we use that adjournment to take a break at that time. But I'm keen to finish with questions so that we can move on. There have been many questions because there's detailed information that people are wanting. But let's finish with the questions and then take an adjournment at an appropriate time for the meeting so that we can continue to be effective. I'm very conscious that this meeting was only set down till I think it was 12, and I'm keen to have it all wrapped up within that time. So we need to be effective. So were there any further questions before we...
Andrew, I have a question.
Oh, Jimmy.
Have you seen? I have a question. I raised up for...
We heard loud and clear that you've got a question. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. I just want to know regarding to the
Oh, no, we can't.
recommendation paragraph.
Jimmy, you've gone from being a booming voice that shocked everybody to has now not been able to hear you at all.
Okay, thank you. So can you hear from me?
Yes, we can. Yep.
Okay, thank you. Regarding to the item 23, the officer recommendation paragraph 3, I would like to know this the 160,000 for enable target local support. Even officer answer the Yanni or Cerise the question. I'm still don't know whether this focus on the extension of the zone, particular focus on South Shore and the South New Brighton, additional household for 800 household. Am I right?
There isn't an extension to the household support project. The extension that you've seen, Councillor, is for the letter drop. My understanding.
Oh, letter drop. Okay.
Oh, and the support for the schools. Sorry, as well.
Okay. If they true, but how about the South Shore and also South New Brighton household? They have a request. Particular today, we have heard from the Philip, yes. And also is the lady. Yeah.
Yep.
Whether cover that one or not.
So we're not suggesting that we open up or extend the household support, the $200 household support to that part of town. However, they are eligible for the out of zones.
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Okay.
some of these questions are starting to become repetitive, and we've heard the answer several times now. I think, given this is an interagency plan, we should just vote on amendments.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm keen to move to get something on the table and then to deal with the amendments so that we can get some direction here. I mean, one thing that we've heard loud and clear from a number of people this morning is that we want to continue with the action here, continue with the activity. We certainly don't want to do anything this morning that holds things up, but we do want to be clear and we do want to pick up any sentiments from the table through the amendments as well. So are we now happy to move on from questions to getting something on the table? Now, Jake, did I see correctly that you...
Yeah, happy to move.
Just had one final question, because I appreciate what the staff have said about the impact of having the 4 different agencies having the operating hours, and I totally understand why you would want to bring those to a close. Mm-hmm. But I guess that wouldn't mean that you would have to shut the out of support community the community support package if you had a mechanism where there could just be an ad hoc request basis to someone, either one of the existing organisations, just during normal operation hours. So I guess the question is, given the concern that's been expressed by my colleague, which I have some sympathy with, people haven't applied because they weren't aware, they've now got an opportunity to apply, but the deadline's coming up really quick. And the deadline is to shut the impact on the 4 groups who are going out of their way to provide the services. Is there a single point of contact that we could leave to enable an extension of time till the end of the month? Whether it be through, the Mayor's welfare or through one of the existing operators during normal...
But the Mayor's Welfare Fund exists. There's nothing to stop them.
So I think this reflects a question that I asked at the briefing on Tuesday. If we get people still wanting to apply after we've closed off, will there be a way that we can work with those late applications?
And what was the answer?
So what we could do, and so the answer was that the Mayor's Welfare is available there. However, as I'm thinking on the trot, we could keep the out of zone option because we are dealing with the out of zones at council. We could keep that open till the end of the month.
Yep.
We would just, the 4 providers, we would close, for want of a better word. Yeah. And we could keep the out of zone open till the end of the month. We could do that. Yep.
All right, which I think sounds as though it addresses the spirit of the questions that were being asked earlier.
I think that would be appreciated if it could be done in an efficient way, just to kind of honour the the commitment that had been sort of made by telling people that they could apply, but they might not hear.
So it's essentially a workaround that allows it to continue to be open until the end of the month.
Yeah, so if we did, if the organisations were to close on the 12th and the 26th of August was the last date for out of zones, we can do that.
Do you need a resolution that reflects that, or can that happen anyway?
It can happen anyway.
It can happen anyway. That's good.
Yep.
So can we take it from this discussion that you will implement that for the out of zone?
Yep.
Yep.
We'll just have to change our promotion for tomorrow, but we'll do that.
Not too late to do that?
No.
All right, fantastic. Thank you. Great. That's good. All right. Now, can I please check that we are now finally done with questions? Yes. Now, Jake, did I get a sense that you're willing to move the staff recommendation?
Yeah, happy to move.
Yeah. And Tim, you're happy to second the staff recommendation. I've then got two amendments that have been put forward, one of which is proposed by Celeste and seconded by Mike. Have we got the wording for that we can put up on the screen, please? So provide up to 20,000 to the Waitai Coastal Burwood Community Board, and we need to add the words up to again, up to 20,000 to the Waikura Linwood Central. So up to 20,000 and up to 20,000. Yet to be used as needed with delegation to the governance manager or other arrangement in consultation with the advisory group to support the social, environmental, wellbeing, recovery of communities impacted by the wastewater treatment plant fire. So that would have the effect of increasing the total, as we heard, to 180,000, as I understand it. Yep. All right. So that's in order, and we can vote.
We need to be more certain about that delegation. It's an advisory group.
Oh, so it sounds like there's some advice coming. Yeah. All right. So let's just park that for the moment. I've then got a further set of amendments from Yanni. Have we got those able to be put up on the screen as well?
And sorry, they probably require a little bit of tweaking based on the staff response to questions. So I'm happy to.
They will. What I'm going to suggest is that we take an adjournment so that we can prepare advice and tweak wording on these, so that what we can come back with is something which is if it's adopted, it's capable of being implemented, and that's in order for the meeting, so that I'm, rather than ruling anything out of order that isn't able to be implemented or that's not appropriate, to get things knocked into shape so that we can then deal with them as amendments. Or maybe even by agreement with the mover and seconder can just adopt them as part of the main resolution.
And can we do that, Chair, in relation to all of the amendments that are proposed?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So Yanni, you don't have a seconder for this as yet. Realising that there's a bit of work to do on it, is there somebody who's willing to be a seconder, realising there'll be some changes? So have you got a seconder lined up for these? Is that correct? Because Celeste is already the mover of one amendment, she's not able to second a further amendment? She may not. Okay. So it might be that there's one package of amendments which is put forward as one block of amendments. All right, let's take an adjournment so that we can take some staff advice on this and work with councillors to get to a workable situation. How long do we need, Dawn?
15 minutes.
15 minutes? All right, let's take 15 minutes. That would see us come back at 25 past, at which point we'll need to be reasonably effective to finish the meeting. All right, so we'll adjourn until 11:25. Thank you.